When your team is aligned and your systems are smooth and predictable, those new patients that come into the practice will be lifelong patients, and your existing patients will be lifelong patients. So it's like working it from both angles to get incredible growth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients Podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. First off, I want to thank the sponsors, both Dental and Tel and the doc sites, for their support. I couldn't be in your space as many times without their support, so I really appreciate it. Today's episode is one of my good friends. Her name is Melinda Heryford. The episode is called Changing Lives, Transforming Practices. Melinda is a coach and a consultant in the dental industry. She works with dentists and owners who want to grow their practice and business and get their team to perform at their best on a daily basis. As a team trainer, she works with dental teams on how to get behind a common goal and work together better. In fact, she's clocked more than 11,000 coaching hours in practice systems and success principles. Her clients often share they are more focused, see more commitment in their staff, are more energized, ultimately creating a plan for a more rewarding practice. On a personal note, when she's not working, she's on an adventure. In the mountains, on a bike, in a kayak, or on the slopes. You simply can't keep up with her. So please welcome to the Raving Patients Podcast, Melinda Heryford. Melinda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Lynn. I just love that you have been doing the Raving Fans, and you have done a great job building an incredible following. Good work.
I really appreciate it. And, I did mention in your bio that you love an adventure. And I remember when we were at the Dental Intelligence Summit back, it's got to be 3 or 4 years ago, we went on this hike up the mountain, and I'm definitely not a hiker. And you blew past me and you were way ahead of the pack. So you definitely like an adventure. And would you just be, real briefly let the viewers and listeners know you have something that's going to be going on, right after we're done basically, and you won't be back until October when the podcast comes out. So let people know what your plans are over the next 30 plus days.
You bet. I leave in a couple weeks, Lynn, and I'm going to do the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrim trek in the north of Spain. That's a 500-mile pilgrimage that goes to Santiago and the Apostle St. James's area. And so I am super stoked. We've had some colleagues that have done that trek. And it is a beautiful time to get inspired and to really kind of have a body, heart, mind, and soul experience that I'm really excited to bring back to dentistry.
Well, that's great. And I'm excited to hear more about that. So I'm sure you'll let your followers and people know online on social exactly what, your experiences were.
I will.
Let's start off by kind of reviewing, there are tons and tons of coaches and consultants. You see posts in all these Facebook groups all the time about, hey, I'm looking to hire a coach or a consultant. So can you talk about how you help practices, why they hire you, what results you get, why you do what you do, basically?
Lynn, dentists struggle with and talk to us about their dissatisfaction with the inefficiencies. It's like always knowing that they could be doing better, but not quite knowing how, and really suffering from I have to do these redos, and I have to do this. The clinical team doesn't have what I need, and and then there's communication breakdowns, and then there's the emotional ups and downs of the team, and so there's all these internal strife pieces that make it really difficult for a dentist owner to navigate. It's like if, I have clients that say, if I could just do the dentistry, it'd be awesome if I didn't have to deal with all this other stuff. And so really what my team and I do is we sit down and really look at what are those bottlenecks and what are the places that are causing the team to be confused or work against each other. And, when I first started, Lynn, years ago, I had 44 systems. And so you can imagine what a client would say. It's like, hey, this is cool. We'll just do these 44 systems and everything will be great. And what would you say as a dentist, right? What would your feeling be?
No way, no how, way too much.
Way too much, right? Well, so I was thinking, wow, I'm just going to help them out here. But really, that was the experience. It's like, that's way too much. And really today, we don't have time to focus on 44 systems. We really have to sliver focus. Where is the best bang for our buck and for our energy? And so I've taken those 44 down to 8. And those are like the sliver focus to really drive the success. And so we're really looking at what's the 20% of the tasks that will create the 80% of the result. And we have just really put a pencil to that to like get rid of the stuff that just is excess. We look at 5 areas and we start with the plan. And so most dentists are like, kind of wake up, do the day, go home, do your life, wake up again, do the day again. It's kind of a rinse and repeat. And when you say, well, what's your plan or what's your goal? They're like, well, I just want to do better, And so we really want to get that way more clear, because a team that knows where they're headed is a powerful force. It's a powerful force. So Simon Sinek talks about, what's your why? And he talks about, like that's why Apple's done so well, because Apple really figured out, how do they make a difference in people's lives? And so when we work with a client, we want to know like what's their why and where are they headed? And we call that a WIG. We call that identifying a WIG. So each client that we work with, we want them to have what's your annual WIG, wildly important goal. And the reason we're fanatical about it is because when the doctor's clear, when the owner's clear, they can line up a team, they can line up multiple facilities. They can, it's way easier to line up and organize people when they know where they're headed. And so that wildly important goal helps us as a beginning to really then say, what are the most important activities that are going to create us getting to that goal? So I'm going to give you an example. Like let's say I had a client that they want to increase their hourly production, the restorative hourly production. Okay, like what are the main things that feed that, right? And so case presentation feeds that, right? In a big way. New patients feed that. Existing exams feed that. So what are the things that feed that? So, and we're going to focus on those. And so that's kind of our overview, is like, where are we headed and how are we going to drive results?
That makes lots of sense. And, one of the other things that obviously adds to that is also the fees they charge. So they charge a higher fee for their procedure, the higher the production gets. So there's two things I want to talk about. Number one is, you mentioned 20% of your effort generates 80% of your results. You want to focus on the 20%. I think by making the systems easier for them, I think you can actually perform better. And I think you've got to focus on that 20%. So I want you to talk a little bit more about that. But also you mentioned this WIG, which I have not heard before. I'm very big in goal setting. People who know me know I've set goals throughout my entire life. I talk about goal setting. I talk about SMART goals. So this wildly important goal called this WIG, is it just that one single goal? And that's the most important thing they're looking to. I know you mentioned it briefly. Can you talk about those two things? Expand on the WIG just a little bit more, because I'm really interested in learning more about that. And number two, talk about the 20% of the effort generates 80% of the results.
So, Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, he in that book, and I'm sure he wasn't the first one, but he popularized this, that when you have more than 3 things to focus on, you have no focus. And then when you talk, because the more you try to focus on all those things, the more distributed your focus is. So the goal is sliver focus. And so when I say wildly important goal, it's like, what's the overarching thing? Like the one thing, you've read that book, The One Thing. What's the overarching thing that we can point to in a wildly important goal that will feed everything else? There is an art in helping the client choose that wildly important goal, because when chosen well, it feeds the healthier systems all the way around. I'm a systems person. It's it's the focus I've always had. And I think part of the reason I've been so focused on it is that when Lynn, your own experience, when you get behind doing something the same way every time, and then you do that with your whole team the same way every time, when you get everybody doing the same thing every time the same way, that predictability is a way less effort, right? It's like way less effort with way better result. And so, so that's the piece. It's like you get that experience where you're on a team and you're doing that repetitively. You're like, wow, this is cool. And Csikszentmihalyi is the guy who studied flow, and that flow state is like when all things are great in our world, right? That flow state. So the wig is like a focus, right? So when I talk about that 80-20, that helps me. It's like, what's the 20% that we're going to focus on so that we can just drive our results and our behavior and our process to that. So you can see how powerful that is, right? It's super powerful. And then then it's easy for me. Like we take each person, we take their roles and responsibilities, like for each position, and we say, okay, here's our wig. What are the most important things they do? 2 or 3 things, not 20, not 30, because everybody has a bunch of roles. You know that. You look at everybody's tasks, they have a million tasks. It's the thing about dentistry. It's loaded with details, loaded, right? So it's really easy to get stuck in that. That's why I say it's predictability, not perfection. It's like, okay, in this role, what are the 3 things that they do that contribute to the wig the most? It's a discipline of like, okay, and my team and I do it all the time. Like, let's get rid of that. We can just feel like, in a process, we over process things. It's like, oh, we could do this, and then we could do this, and then we could do this. No. What are the 8 steps in that, in that 100-step process? What are the 8 that actually drive the result? So you can see it's a discipline, and we're constantly going, let's get rid of these things. Let's just do this. And so whatever the wig is, that's the goal, is we line up the most important things. That's what we call that 20%, the most important things.
So the 20% is going to help you drive the wig that you're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
And then how does someone go about setting this wildly important goal, wig, versus the other goals how do they determine which is the most important thing? Because obviously, look, when I set goals, I set 5 or 6 things I want to do. I put a time on it. I come up with some type of incentive to myself, so it motivates me to get it done. But how does someone determine what that wildly incentive goal is?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have an event in January where we actually invite people to come develop that wig. And there is some real power in doing that in a group, versus just solo. But I'll tell you, the process is straightforward, Lynn. It's like, look at your results from last year, right? Look at your results. What were your results? What are you most proud about? And what do you want to do more of this year, right? So it's like, that's why we measure so we can actually like also adjust our behavior for the next year. So when you look at all that, and then that process of like what's most important to you in all those categories of your life, right? That, they call that the wheel of life, but we do just the wheel of the practice. And in the wheel of the practice, I would say, look at the 6 areas, which is the plan, what's important about the plan, what's important about the people, what's important about patients, process, what processes do you want to make better, and what do you want to have happen in your profit? And then our last P is continuous improvement. So we have you look at all those areas and like just brainstorm it. It's like, what are those things? And then we say, it's like this process of looking at those, journaling about those, Lynn. And then it's like, if you were to pick one that would drive all the rest, which one would it be? I think, Lynn, you get better at this over time, right? You get better at this over time because I think it is a discipline that we're not used to. We love let's create 1 million goals for the goal setters. Let's create 1 million goals. This is awesome. Makes me feel good. But what really feels good is getting the goal,
Yeah, if you can't achieve your goal, setting goals doesn't matter at all. So the best part about it is achieving the goal. So, like I said, I love setting goals. I just never heard of this WIG, and I'm curious to see how do you separate the WIG from the other goals you want to set. That was really what I was trying to get out of the conversation. So thank you for at least entertaining me on that one.
I would just say on that, Lynn, I would say when you choose the one, then all the other goals support that one.
Gotcha. So you can set multiple goals to be clear, but all the goals you set have to support the wildly important goal. That's really what it comes down to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And remember what Jim Collins says, when you're over 3, your focus gets distributed and you'll do worse.
So you're okay if somebody sets a wildly important goal and just limit their supporting goals to 3 of them?
Yeah. In fact, it's a muscle. It's a muscle that we exercise with them. So when they pick out their most important things, we call those most important things MITs, right? Those supporting goals, and they're SMART goals. But it really is like, what's going to feed that, and we still work on other stuff. It's not like we got to manage a business. There's a business to manage here, but it really is like, that's the plan. The plan is that. And we create dashboards, Lynn, that deal with the WIGs so that every team member has a KPI that is attached to that WIG. And every week we track, or is that team member, they track for themselves, but it's on a main dashboard. Are they on track or off track? And if they're off track, there's a protocol.
Okay. So my next question revolves around something else that you said. Dentists are known to want to be perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
And I always say we're called dental practice for a reason. We're not called dental perfect. Okay. I mean, that's the way I like to say things. We can't have a perfect business. So you're focused on more predictability than being perfect. And I think, as you said, when you have the same people doing the same thing many times over the same way, you end up with predictable results.
Yeah.
But, another thing I like to say is, if you're not happy with those results, you have to do different things.
Absolutely.
Because the different things are going to result in different behaviors and different results as well. So can you just touch base a little bit more on this predictability and not perfection?
Yeah, you bet. Dentists do really get wrapped up in the perfection piece, all of it. I did an evaluation. We have something we call one-to-ones, and it's a regular meeting with every team member every 6 weeks. Half an hour, not a big deal, but it's a one-to-one where the owner and the leaders can build relationship with each team member. And it's just fascinating how doctors are always looking at what's wrong. And Dan Sullivan wrote a book in conjunction with Benjamin Hardy, The Gap and the Gain. And they talk about, when we always measure from the gap, like what's wrong, it is a negative cycle that just that doesn't build goodness, that doesn't build self-esteem, it doesn't build goodness. And so I think dentists are caught in the trap of what's wrong. It doesn't make them feel good, and it doesn't make their team members feel good. So this one-to-one that I did yesterday, it's like all the things that were wrong. It's like, no, we're not going to focus on all the things that are wrong with this person. We're going to focus on what's right and one thing they can do to be better. So that's what Dan Sullivan's talking about, is like, you measure progress looking backwards, like what's good about this, right? So it's a very different mindset for a dentist, right? They're always looking at what's wrong. No, instead, what's good? What have you done good so far, and what's next? Does that make sense? So it's like, then I'm changing my mindset. So that mindset is just so powerfully negative, right? That doesn't build our people up. And if we want our people built up and bringing their best, we got to figure out, how do we coach them? How do we coach them into their best? How do we inspire their best? This is just a really different landscape for us with coaching people. And so I love this idea of, how do we get them inspired to bring their best? And it really is this idea of not perfection, right? We're not going to put them in our perfection trap. We're in comparison trap. We're going to put them into what have they done right so far and what's next for them.
Makes a lot of sense. The other thing I wanted to talk about was something we haven't discussed yet, was the value of vision and values. So can you at least touch base on that?
I used to start with vision, like, okay, what's your vision? That's that I had a whole process that I went through with dentists. What's your vision? Do you know what they said to me, Len? They're like, what do you mean vision? I don't know what you mean by vision. This is like airy fairy. I don't like whatever. I just want to do my work. I don't want this vision. So that is how I got onto the wig, because they could wrap their head around one big goal, but they can't wrap their head around some airy fairy, like, what's your vision for life, right? So now we've transformed vision to wig for our clients, because we feel like that helps them align their whole team behind that. And then we really have worked very hard this last couple of years on values, because values are the way to behaviorally get people lined up around being their best. Right. And so the values really, you can use values to inspire the best performance from people if you do it well. So it's really vital. We, on our rinse and repeat in dentistry, most dentists don't like, what's a value? I don't care, or whatever. And what's a vision? But really, you can see this is fundamental. It's a fundamental business piece. But if I want predictability in my business, these are essential tools to create that predictability. And so what I say is that's the way we create freedom for our dentists, because really they want to go in, do their job, do a good job at the dentistry, and hit the road. They want to go to, take 12 weeks off. They want their life. That's why they chose to be a dentist. And so these are, these elements that I'm talking about, the wig, the mitts, the 8 systems, the roles and responsibilities for people. That's the 20% that we really work on all the time, because if we make that good, we can give them the freedom that they want.
Got it. And the last topic I wanted to talk about, and I think you touched base on it very briefly, was removing bottlenecks, and how removing the bottlenecks, my assumption is, will change the entire business model if you recognize what the bottlenecks are.
You bet. So we just have when we're looking at those dashboards with the clients, and we have 2 dashboards we look at, but when we're looking at those bottlenecks pop up. Like when something's off track, there's a bottleneck. And so those are the systems that we actually then really support the dentist going in. We like a step-by-step process, a step-by-step SOP. As painstaking as that feels for most clients, they hate that part. But the truth is, when you do fillings, you do it the same way every time. When you do crowns, you do it the same way every time. It's the same with your processes. We want your processes just like your fillings and your crowns. It's like the same way every time. And we take those bottlenecks, and that's how we remove those bottlenecks, is we get the most common bottleneck, and we create a SOP for that, and we get the whole team aligned behind that. And again, that's predictability, Lynn. It's like, we get people doing the same thing the same way every time on your top 5 or 10 processes. And that's what creates that smooth flow.
Got it. So is there anything else? I don't want your contact information. I don't want us to, this isn't promotional at all, but is there anything that you wanted to touch base on that we haven't touched base on yet?
I think we always talk about wanting new patients, and that's certainly one of your focuses is new patients, right? And I think the thing that I want to say is when your systems and when your team is aligned and your systems are smooth and predictable, those new patients that come into the practice will be lifelong patients, and your existing patients will be lifelong patients. So it's like working it from both angles to get incredible growth. So it's your existing is stronger and your new patients come in and stay because you have this predictability.
Perfect. So let's move on to my fun part of not that this wasn't fun, but an even funner part of the podcast. So we're going to go ahead and do some lightning round Q&A. We'll spend a few minutes doing this, and then we'll do a wrap up. So
great.
For those that don't know, I use an app called Pod Decks, and there's random questions in a deck called The Hustle. So they're all business-related questions. All right. So first question, ready? What distracts you the most every single day?
My phone. I think my phone, it distracts me. In email.
What business-related book has inspired you the most? Or another way of saying it is, what is your favorite book?
I think I have two right now. I love Atomic Habits. I think it's incredible, right? They're just full of great things about developing awesome habits. And then Gino Wickman wrote Traction, and Traction is a really beautiful, simplistic version for managing a business.
Got it. What kind of culture exists in your organization, and how did you establish it?
My organization has a culture of collaboration. And I established that because I think everybody's voice matters. And I love it when people are bringing their best. And so I'm looking at how do I support that?
Perfect. Next question is, describe Mondays for you in one word.
Organize.
Okay. What important rules have you learned about business that have made you more successful?
Following best practices, learning and doing what other businesses have done well, and not reinventing the wheel.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Who has been your greatest inspiration?
I have a mentor, Hal. He's my greatest inspiration. He's just someone who taught me how to consult, who really taught me how to be a great coach. And I just love him dearly.
Do you keep a journal, and does it help you?
Sporadically, I keep a journal, and it is super useful when I do it to calm my thoughts and organize my strategies.
Okay. This is a tough question. This I ask every so often. It comes up, but this is a hard one. If you had to open up a lemonade stand tomorrow, what would you call your lemonade stand?
Oh, that's cute. Possibilities.
Interesting. Okay. So not like Melinda's lemonade stand or anything like that. So Hereford's lemonade, nothing. Okay. All right. That's interesting. That's different. So who is someone that you would love to collaborate with, and what would you love to collaborate on?
I would love to collaborate with Patrick Lencioni, and I would collaborate with him on like the latest team and business strategies for the best to manage businesses.
Okay, 2 questions left. First one, if you had a magic stick, which 3 things would you change in the world?
I would change the political divide. I would change our healthcare system, and maybe more the economic piece of it. And I would change our education system.
Okay, they work. That's good. Last question. What is one subscription that you can't live without?
Yeah, I think Zoom I couldn't live without. And social media wise, and probably Netflix.
Netflix is the most popular choice. So
is it? That's funny.
Yep, I hear that a lot. So, all right, Melinda, let's talk about how can the audience, viewers and listeners reach out to you, get more information about how they can help you, and do you have something that you can send them, or is there something you want to offer them to reach out to you?
We have a people analyzer tool that I'd love for them to get. It helps us when we interview people and when we coach people. It's a tool that assesses where they line up on values, where they line up on skill set, and where they line up on tool set. So I'd love to be able to give that to them, and they can email me and request that. Lynn?
What email is best for you?
Melinda@melindahereford.com is the best. The other thing that we do for people that are for dentists that are very interested in seeing what's possible for them and understanding where their greatest potential resources are within their very own practice, we have something that we call the revenue reveal. And so that's for the one that's more interested in really like, hey, I know I could be doing better. I know that there's some bottlenecks here, and I'd like to know where I could focus my energy. So that's called the revenue reveal. It's a value of $1,000, and we'll do it for the Raving Patients listeners for complimentary for them. And we also have an event, Lynn. So I would love to talk about our event in January, which we support doctors, and we ask them to bring their leaders, their office managers and leaders, and we develop their wig and their mitts, their plan for the year. So that's in January, and I'd love for people that want to plan, they are welcome to attend it. It's here in Sacramento. It's in Roseville, and they're welcome to attend. We'd love to have them. The name of the event is called CEO Strategic Elevate, and we do have some information on that, so they can just email me, and we'll send them the information on that event.
Perfect. So if you have any interest in learning more about Melinda's event, please email her at the email. It's melinda@melindahereford.com. And just for spelling purposes, it's MELINDAHERYFORD, melindahereford.com. So I will say it there so people don't have to look
Perfect.
it up.
Perfect.
So Melinda, this was great. Thank you so much for joining me today. If the listeners or viewers like the episode, please go ahead and share it. Please let your colleagues know about it. Please let your colleagues know about what Melinda could do for their practice if you know someone who's in the need of her services as well. Can you go and like us, review us, share us, do whatever you can to help promote the podcast. I would really appreciate it. And remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, Melinda, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your insight, and we'll talk to everyone soon.